August 1st, more. I was still in a fog as we all walked back onto the baseball field where we first met. Everybody out of breath from running, and the girls talking over each other about what happened and where they were when it started, and sneaking little looks at Rondell. My head was pounding where I got hit, and I kept having to dab my sleeve against my cut because it was bleeding again. We went into one of the dugouts and sat on the bench, Rondell just listening to everybody with a blank look on his face, like he wasn't even at the party and was hearing about the supposed fight for the first time. At one point, Jules turned to Rondell and shouted over the commotion, "Why didn't you just stop when you knew they were knocked out?" Rondell made a confused face. He looked at me. "He could have killed that one black guy," a girl named Rosanna said, refusing to look at Rondell. "What about the guy on the ground?" Flocka said. "He didn't move since I came in." The girl with the birthmark on her face was wiping tears from her eyes and shaking her head. "Look," I said, "we don't even know how it started. They were probably messing with him." "Jesus, though," Jules said. "I can't get that Mexican guy's bloody face out of my head. His nose was pointing all to the side." Rondell looked at the ground. He pulled his bag out from under the dugout bench where we'd stashed him, but when he saw the look I was giving him, he pushed it back under. "What's that?" Flocka said. I thought quick and said, "We stashed some stuff here so we didn't have to go back to the hotel." Flocka looked down at where the bags were, and then she looked at Jules. "Stupid, stupid, stupid," Rosanna said, shaking her head. "Why do guys always gotta fight each other to prove who's the bigger man? We were just having fun." "It's like they're roosters," Jules said. "I saw this special on TV about cockfighting. It's the exact same thing." "But we're human beings," Rosanna shot back. "We're supposed to be more involved than that shit, right?" "Evolved," Jules said. "You know what I mean," Rosanna said. "God," the birthmark girl said. "I thought I was going to be sick." "Yo, could everybody just calm down?" I said, feeling all stressed and confused. "We made it back here. Everybody's okay. That's the main thing." "You see those guys laying on the floor?" Rosanna shot back with attitude. "They look okay to you?" "I'm talking about us, though," I said. The girls kept looking at Rondell, who was looking back and forth from them to me like he had no idea what we were talking about. For the first time since I met him, I thought maybe Rondell was better off locked up, where he couldn't hurt somebody or even himself. Maybe there's a reason we have jail. Rosanna stood up and grabbed her bag, said, "I'm out of here. I'm going home." "We're all going home," Jules said. "Flocka, you too. Say goodbye to Miguel and let's go." I turned to Flocka, who was giving Jules a look, like they were saying something with their eyes. Then she turned to me. "Miguel," she said, "let's walk with your friend to the other dugout so my girls can wait here without worrying while you and me say bye." I shrugged, told Rondell to come on. He sat up and reached under the bench for both our bags, but Flocka said, "You can just leave your stuff. We won't be that long." Jules looked at Flocka and said, "We'll wait here." I led Rondell to the other dugout and told him to wait for me on the bench. "How come, Mexico?" he said. "'Cause you freaked everybody out, man. They think you ruined the entire party." "What you mean?" he said. "Just trust me," I said. "Look, we'll talk about it later. Right now I'm going to say bye to Flocka." He looked at the ground and then looked up at me again, said, "I'm scared." And that confused me more than any single thing he'd ever said since I met him. The guy beats the hell out of 3 guys and now he's scared? I looked at him all crazy, said, "What are you even talking about?" He shrugged and lowered his head and laid down on the bench. "There you go," I said. "Take a little nap for a sec and I'll be right back." He closed his eyes and folded his hands together on his stomach and started mumbling under his breath like he was speaking in tongues. I was tripping out watching him, but just then Flocka took me by the arm and pulled me out of the dugout and back over to the one where her girls were sitting. She told them she needed 10 minutes with me alone. They all looked at each other except Jules, who said, "Okay, just go. We'll be right here." Flocka nodded and pulled me away, told me we were going to this other part of the park. My 10 minutes with Flocka. The 2 of us walked together without saying a word. We went along the dark bushes that lined the edge of the park, past an old dried-up fountain full of dead, wrinkled leaves, a run-down tennis court with no net, and weeds growing through every crack, and all the way to this abandoned playground. There was only a couple tagged-up swings, a rusty slide, and some paint-chipped monkey bars. We cut through the hard sand and sat next to each other on the swings, started rocking back and forth a little. At first, neither of us said anything or even looked at each other. I reached down for a rock and held it in my right hand, looking all around us at the playground. She pushed a little of her hair behind her ear and stared at the ground. Finally, I cleared my throat and told her, "Sorry about the party and all that. I don't even know what happened." "It wasn't you," she said, looking up at me, "but your friend was scary, Miguel. Something isn't right about him." I shrugged, tossed the rock outside of the playground into the grass. "Anyways," Flocka said, and then she started swinging a little faster. She flung her head back and looked in the sky, and then she slowed down again and said, "I grew up in this park, you know." Yeah, I said. She stopped. My stepdad used to take me when I was little. He'd push me on this exact swing. I nodded, but she didn't see because she was reaching into her pocket for her phone. She slipped it open to check a text and then flipped it closed, slipped it back in her pocket. It went quiet between us again, but just sitting there with her after everything that had just happened at the party and my head still all foggy, it made me have a strange feeling. For some reason, I actually wanted to tell her everything about me and Rondell. I wanted to tell someone the truth about us. And I already know how people shouldn't go around telling their business to people they don't even know. But at the same time, besides Rondell, I didn't know anybody anymore. Flocka and me had at least messed around and talked some. I looked up at her. She was staring at her right palm, some of her dark hair spilling in front of her pretty brown face. And then the weirdest thing happened, man. I totally started telling her stuff. I just opened my mouth and it all came pouring out. Shit I hadn't even processed yet. I told her how 5 months and 3 days ago I did something that changed my life forever. Something so fucked up I promised myself I'd never say it out loud or feel anything for anybody ever again, not even myself. I told her how because of what I did, I got sentenced to a group home for 9 months, and how the entire first month I didn't talk to nobody, including the counselors, because I didn't think anybody was worth my time. Then they put Rondell in my room, and even though he was straight special ed and a Bible thumper, he at least got me talking some, which was probably why I had his back now. I told her how another resident, Mong, had come into my room in the middle of the night and asked if I wanted to break out of the group home and try to make it to Mexico. How I agreed to go, not so much because I wanted to, but because I couldn't think up any reasons not to. I honestly didn't give a shit about anything anymore. Who cares what happens to you when you don't care if you're alive or dead, you know? I told her about the night we actually left, how I snuck in the office and stole the petty cash and all our files from the desk drawers and hopped out the window into some flower bed. How once we got to the mall, Mong said he knew a resort place in Mexico where we could live and get jobs and be free, and how that's the first point I actually thought maybe I could start a new life, one where the shit I did back home no longer existed. I told Flocka how we got picked up by Mong's cousin Mei Lee, who drove us the wrong way, and how we had to run out of the pizza place while she was in the bathroom and figure out how to get down the coast in the middle of San Francisco without a ride. I told her how me and Mom were having mad problems with each other this whole time, but then we had a long talk at the beach in Malibu about life and the earth and true love and other deep shit, and how weird it was when out of nowhere he told me I was his best friend. Then the next morning I told her Mong drowned himself right there in front of me and Rondell, and since neither one of us knew what to say, we just didn't say anything and grabbed our shit and walked away. Once I started telling Flocka stuff, I couldn't stop, man. It was like somebody else took over my body. I just kept talking and talking and talking, and for some reason, the shit was making me feel more and more real. Like the past 4 months actually happened. It wasn't just something I watched on TV or in a movie or read in one of my books. All this stuff, what I did, and the judge making my sentence, and us sleeping on beaches and building bonfires and getting in fights and running from cops. Even tonight, the party, and me and Flocka hooking up in that empty room and Rondell beating the shit out of those guys. And now sitting here on these little kids' swings. All this was actually my life. I explained to Flocka what happened when me and Rondell finally made it down to Mexico, how once I was actually standing there looking into the country, I couldn't go across. Something made me freeze up. At the time, I had no idea what it was, but now I think it was something to do with my gramps and my pops. How one snuck into America and became a citizen, and the other joined the army and died for our country. And someday, maybe I'll go down to Mexico for real, I told her. Maybe I'd even live there and learn Spanish and visit where my grandparents were from. But I couldn't do it yet. I still had to be in America until I made shit right. And that was why I came up with our new plan, how me and Rondell were going to get money and replace what we took from the petty cash, send it back to the lighthouse. After that, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I hadn't thought that far ahead yet. Maybe I'd talk to my moms, or maybe I'd go to the place where they buried my old man and I'd actually visit there on his grave this time, like I'd always wanted to. I didn't even know, but I was going to handle my petty cash situation, that was for sure. Flocka didn't say a word the whole time I talked. She just sat there on her swing, rocking back and forth, staring at me, nodding sometimes. And when I was finished, it got mad quiet between us. Only thing that made any sound was the crickets chirping away in the bushes. And how weird is that shit, I thought in my head, that there's such a thing as crickets, these little bugs that hide in bushes at night and make crazy sounds together. Who knows why? I know it's just a small part of the world, but for some reason it made me wonder about everything, being alive and God, and if me and Flocka were maybe even meant to be and would get married someday. and I'd introduce her to my moms. When I couldn't handle Flocka being quiet anymore, I turned to her and said, "You ain't gonna call the cops on us now, right?" She shook her head, staring back in my eyes. "It's just so weird," she said. "What? You totally don't seem like that. My whole life I've been around kids who get in trouble, and they're all a certain way. You seem so different." I didn't say anything back, just looked at the bushes, thinking what she meant by that. She pulled her cell halfway out her pocket to check the time, shoved it back in, and said, "What'd you do, anyways?" I picked up a stick off the ground and didn't look at her. "To get arrested in the first place, I mean," she said. I looked in front of us at the bushes where the crickets were hiding and thought for a sec. And I swear to God, man, I almost told her the truth right there. I almost said what happened out loud for the first time ever. But I couldn't. I opened my mouth to talk and the words just vanished into thin air. "Well," she said. Maybe it was because I already told her too much, or because of everything that happened at the party, or because I just didn't want to say anything more about what I did. But right then, I leaned in and I kissed her, and she kissed me back. And when we separated, I thought how maybe we were together now, in the real way, boyfriend, girlfriend. Like no matter if we got in an argument or disagreed on something, she was still going to be my girl, and I could just kiss her like this anytime I wanted. I leaned in and kissed her again, tilted my head, put my hands on her sides, and kissed her as good as I knew how. After a few seconds like that, Flocka pulled back. She smiled at me and pulled herself from her skirt pocket. "Hang on one sec," she said. "I just gotta call Jules." I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. She slid out of her swing and went over near the cricket bushes to make her call. I watched her, trying to think what Diego would say about me telling a girl my business like that, or leaning in to kiss her. I picked up a stick, broke it in half, and tossed both pieces to the ground. Then I felt my neck for Monk's tooth necklace and tucked it inside my sweatshirt. His good luck charm was now my good luck charm. It's probably how come a girl as fine as Flocka seemed like she was feeling me so much. When Flocka came back, she sat right on my lap and we locked into this nice little making out rhythm, our best so far. I wasn't thinking random things this time either. I was just thinking about what we were doing, how hyped it was getting me. She pulled away and touched my face with her hand. "I really want to be with you, Miguel, like so bad. But I gotta make sure my girls get home okay." "It's cool," I said, trying to think if be with you meant us having sex. Because I was pretty sure she was talking about sex, but I didn't know for sure. But the way she said it, "I got an idea," she said. "Let's make a pact." "About what?" "Let's meet here tomorrow night at exactly 10 p.m. Just me and you, and this time I won't have to go anywhere. I promise." "Yeah?" "Yes," she said. "We'll stay together the whole night." "Okay," I said, my heart already beating faster. Now I knew she was meaning sex. She ran her hand up my arm and bit her lip. "You can wait for me, right, baby?" I could wait, I said, thinking if Diego would say he could wait or not. "Okay, come on," she said, hopping off me. "Walk me back to the baseball field." We left the playground together and walked back to the field. After we all said bye to each other and Flocka winked at me, I watched them hurry off together. When they got up to the hill, they even started running, which seemed weird, but then I thought how Flocka's girls were still scared about what happened with Rondell at the party. I grabbed me and Rondell's bags and carried him over to the dugout where Rondell was sleeping. I pushed him under the bench, then stood there looking at him for a while. He was sleeping like a damn baby. I wondered what kind of kid could do all the shit he'd done earlier, beating the hell out of 3 people, and then just go to sleep like nothing. I actually felt worse for him than ever because of what just happened with Flocka. I mean, here I was having an actual relationship with a girl, something that happens to normal people, and Rondell was just laying here asleep after beating up people, totally alone. I went to the other end of the dugout and sat on the bench. I balled up one of the shirts in my bag for a pillow, laid down, and closed my eyes. But I couldn't fall asleep right away. I kept thinking about Flocka and how it would be the next night when she stayed with me, how maybe she could even chill with me and Rondell for a while until we figured out how to get the money. Or maybe we could stay down here in National City. It didn't really matter where we were that much. I tried to think if I'd ever met a girl as pretty as Flocka. After tossing and turning a bunch of times, I gave up on the whole sleep thing and sat up. Sleep just wasn't going to happen. My mind was going too much. I stared across the dark baseball field and thought about me and Rondell and the money we needed. What was going to end up happening to us? I thought about Flocka, our pact tomorrow night. And then for some reason, I started looking up into the cloudless sky, touching Mong's tooth necklace and listening to the cricket sounds again, thinking how weird it was to be alive to actually hear it. but not just alive like I was yesterday and the day before, alive like I knew I was alive, like I could feel the breaths coming into my chest, and I knew I was the person inside my own body.